going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our webinar introduction before we dive into our content today. And we are Wheelhouse DMG. We have been delivering performance for privacy-first brands for more than 12 years. And we have been working with some of the world's most innovative brands for even longer. And at Wheelhouse, our strengths are really combining strategy, performance, technology, and creativity to deliver exceptional business value. We have a variety of practices, which you can see listed here, but we have the most success really when we tackle challenges from an all-inclusive perspective, which is what we like to call our one wheelhouse approach to privacy-first digital marketing. Your host today is Joe Volk. He is the Associate Director of Digital Strategy at Wheelhouse. Joe has been with us for about 7 years and specializes in inbound marketing and content strategy, content design, SEO, and leading client engagements and acquisition. I really can't think of a better host to explore the last year of Google's transformative changes and what it means for search. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Joe.
Thanks, Grace. All right, so for this webinar today, there were so many different things that happened in search marketing last year. And we have all these different folks throughout our company who have their finger on the pulse of one aspect of it, whether that's the ad tech, whether it's the algorithm changes, whether it's AI, or whether it's kind of the regulatory atmosphere around Google's products and other digital platforms. So we wanted to design this webinar to kind of bring all of these different areas together and try to help you all have a coherent idea about everything that happened, what's the signal, what's the noise, and what does it all mean. So this webinar, I'm the one presenting, but it's been a group collaborative effort between experts from our digital strategy team, SEO strategists, more technical folks, advertisers, and everybody from our kind of higher level team leads to really focused SMEs have been involved in putting together this content. And I'm excited to share with you just kind of a walkthrough of everything we saw in 2024. You can kind of see on the agenda there, we're going to go through first an overview of what we think changed in 2024, then kind of go area by area through the core search algorithm, the emergence of AI-based search, the paid search landscape, the Google leaks and regulatory actions and court cases that happened, and then based on all of that, what we're watching for now going into 2025, which I guess we're already a month into. Time flies. So to start, when we look back at 2024, we see it as really probably the biggest year of change for Google that's happened in the last decade. So we consider this year when the rules of search marketing really changed. We've been existing in a period of relative stability and continuity, where over the last 10 years, Google has changed both their organic search and paid search systems to be based on some very powerful underlying machine learning technologies. And there have been sort of incremental changes within a consistent paradigm that's made it relatively easy for someone who works in SEO or works in PPC, who has really done their homework and has some good experience under their belt, to have really well-defined playbooks and to kind of run those repeatedly for different initiatives, or in the case of an agency like us, different clients. All of that has sort of gone out the window in the last 12 months or so. The reasons for this is that Google really started facing an unprecedented level of competition, especially around AI, and also facing at the same time deepening scrutiny and skepticism from folks in the marketing community, from folks in the regulatory world, and from the consumer as well. So the upshot of all of this, for those of us that have to work in and around Google's ecosystem for our daily jobs, is that the tactics and the playbooks that have been built up over years and that can sort of together make up the conventional wisdom in search marketing really are not working the same way they used to work. And behind the scenes, in one-to-one conversations, in conferences, in happy hours at those conferences, You're hearing panic, concern, doom and gloom. You're also hearing some people who see an opportunity, who see maybe for their niche or their skill set that opportunity is opening up. But the common thread is that this is a very dynamic time. So for those of you that are not spending a lot of time digesting every single piece of search marketing thought leadership or going to every conference, we've done the work for you, and we're going to distill for you in this webinar what's changed, what you need to pay attention to, and how we are actually changing our search marketing strategies to give our clients competitive edge. And I think one idea that we're going to return to again and again in this webinar, that if you don't remember anything else, I think you can remember this. And this is one clear, simple idea that hopefully you can use to look at search marketing going forward. This idea is that we believe that brands will win in this new paradigm by returning to the fundamentals of marketing. What do we mean by that? We mean creating distinct messaging and content, building your brand, knowing your audience, and making it easier for people to do what they're trying to do. And hopefully all those different elements of what we consider the fundamentals of good marketing will be clear as we kind of walk through specific examples in this presentation. So to start, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into changes that Google made to their core search algorithm that's affected organic search very deeply this last year. Google made algorithmic changes starting early in 2024 that were the most complex and wide-reaching that they've probably ever made in such a short period of time. The official kind of justification for this was that Google is trying to prevent spam, especially in the form of kind of programmatically generated or AI generated content, and to improve content quality. When Google talks about content quality, and when SEO folks and digital marketers that are familiar with Google's ecosystem talk about it, they talk about EAT: experience, expertise, authority, trust. Google felt that they needed to make a series of algorithm changes to organic search to make sure that content that had genuine EAT was winning out over content that maybe had found a loophole or was imitating better content. The upshot of this, though, is that many different business models were totally wiped out or at least significantly set back by this. And there's something else happening in parallel with this where Google made a licensing deal with Reddit to use Reddit's content library to train AI exclusively. And during that same time, although officially unrelated, Reddit gained much more prominence in organic search results through a forums and discussions feature and through Reddit results showing up in the standard search results as well. And Reddit, as it continues to take a bigger share of SEO, is a huge optimization barrier because you cannot just go on Reddit and write what you wish people thought was true about your brand and have it rank. Optimizing for Reddit to the extent that you can do that is a much longer term and more uncertain process than optimizing your actual website. And Google is continuing to show forums, social posts, etc., more prominently in search. So analogous challenges will continue to be part of search going forward, we think. To put some visuals to this, we can see that Google started rolling out some updates earlier in the year. That updates focused on the same thing, either targeting specific tactics that they saw as spam or updating the whole entire core algorithm to boost content quality, continued throughout the year. And I think it's notable here that there's a pile of them at the end of the year. So I think we should see this not as something that just ends in 2024, but rather as something that you think you can make the case is accelerating. We'll talk a little bit more about what we think about that, but to be sure, I think everyone would be surprised if this just died down in 2025. I think we'll see continued changes to the algorithm. To speak to the prominence of Reddit, we can kind of see the growth from the early 2023, all in a pretty straightforward way, all the way through 2024, to now a over 1 billion monthly sessions for Reddit. That maybe has dropped a little bit at the end of the year, but this is still a total paradigm shift in terms of this massive social forum taking up a bigger share of search. If we have to summarize who won and who lost with the algorithm changes we've seen so far, you can almost think of it as sort of the rich got richer, and you can also think of it in terms of long-term investments in building strong brands paying off. So whether you see this as good news or bad news, maybe it has something to do with how invested you are in traditional SEO tactics. The winners were folks that had authoritative and distinctive brands. So folks that had content that had really high EAT, unique perspective, and that had lots of people engaging with it, and that built that content on a foundation of a strong brand with a deep and broad investment in their own authority and prominence. And that tied it together in a strategy that said, let's give some real information gain. So let's make it so you can learn things from coming to our site, or you can gain things from coming to our site that you can't get from other sites. Content that goes beyond consensus. Let's not just kind of repeat what everyone else is saying. And creative that cuts through. Let's invest in production value and in creative that's really well aligned with our audience. All of those things added up to winning. You can probably see here that this would favor larger brands and incumbents naturally, although not exclusively, but it would be more likely to favor them. The losers, I think, were folks that had found ways to really heavily leverage SEO best practices, sometimes in very authentic ways with like SMBs or individual publishers, but other times in maybe what you might characterize as schemes done kind of at scale by large organizations. So sites that were scaling up content just in the hope that, look, this isn't ever going to be the best page, but if we get just a little tiny piece of this big traffic pie, that's good enough for us. Large publishers that were using their brand to run kind of affiliate marketing programs on the side. And then probably most unfortunately of all of these, niche independent bloggers that were working really hard on putting out kind of idiosyncratic, high quality, sometimes content, did feel kind of the punishment of the algorithm changes, and many of those folks were felt very hard done by this for understandable reasons. But at the end of the day, I don't think Google is trying to make broad changes very quickly, so they really haven't been able to make any sorts of adjustments or exceptions in a way to kind of let a lot of those independent publishers back into the search mix. So what does this mean for SEO? For our clients, where they're invested in organic search and they're trying to get qualified traffic from high and mid funnel organic search, our strategies for them have become much more narrow, and they've become much less focused on just sort of keywords in a vacuum and more focused on alignment with audience in a more authentic way. We're applying more scrutiny to the idea that small sites or challenger brands can rank for competitive keywords and topics if they are not already. Instead, we're looking at more targeted strategies that leverage a brand authority that you already have, that leverage a foothold you already have, rather than just casting a really wide net and hoping that we can get, like I said earlier, some pieces of some really big pies. We're also paying even more attention than we already have been to genuine EAT, to content that has undeniable expertise, experience, authority, trustworthiness, and to content that has demonstrable information gain that gives you something competitors aren't giving you. Proprietary data is one really great way to do this. Non-consensus perspectives that challenge the kind of generic way of seeing things is another way to do this. We've increased our efforts and encouraged our clients to increase their efforts to monitor Reddit and to social discussion. And where this really turns into action is when you can break down silos between channel managers. So if digital PR or if outbound or all these other channels, social, have been operating way over here and they're maybe even managed by different people, they have different KPIs, different strategies, what happens on those channels and what our kind of our play is on those channels is affecting what happens in organic search more than it ever has. And there needs to be kind of a cohesive effort and a clear-eyed set of guiding principles that unite all those channels, because it's not as simple or as siloed of an ecosystem as it used to be. We also believe that brands can win by eliminating hostile UX, what some people call hostile UX, UX features that annoy people, that create friction, that create a very crowded screen. We want to have UX that keeps users engaged without feeling manipulative, and that's something that can be a really interesting problem to solve for brands based on what creative they have available, what their tech stack is, all of those factors. But I think when you look at these items, hopefully you see those threads of those marketing fundamentals, that you will win by creating distinct messaging and content, by building a strong brand, by knowing your audience, and by making it easier for people to do what they're trying to do. So as if all those changes to the Google algorithm weren't enough challenge this year for folks that focus on organic search, we also had the thing that we've all heard and read so much about, the kind of AI revolution and the growth of AI-based search. One aspect of this that's been especially pertinent for healthcare marketers, people like us that focus on marketing for healthcare organizations, medical device companies, other privacy-sensitive brands, is that the AI overviews that have rolled out in Google have sort of caught folks off guard, because at first there was a sense that even as Google launched these AI overviews, that they would not cover these YMYL, your money or your life queries. So at first, the theory was that Google will keep information to do with health conditions, health treatments, etc., out of the AI overviews, and AI overviews will be for very simple, discrete informational needs. That's all been proven wrong. We're seeing YMYL topics in AI overviews. We're seeing transactional topics in AI overviews. They have gone broad, and while some would debate this, I think the quality of them has increased as well over time. Another really interesting detail here is that we're seeing YouTube videos appearing with increasing frequency in AI overviews, including for complex YMYL topics. So that means you could easily be a healthcare brand or a medical device brand that does not have a YouTube strategy or does not have a very good YouTube strategy, and has been suddenly caught flat-footed, where your ability to take upper and mid-funnel traffic that you were relying on in organic search has suddenly become more contingent on having video. That's the kind of thing that can really be a problem on a KPI level, and that can necessitate a big strategic shift. We see at this point that according to some of the most recent data we have, 63% of healthcare queries are showing an AI overview. This rings true with what we're seeing for a lot of our patients or our clients, especially ones that have a lot of upper and mid-funnel traffic in organic search. This actually means that AI overviews are rolling out more for health topics than for some other topics, and that marketers in healthcare should expect this to be just part of the standard conditions going forward. So while all of that's happening on the Google platform with AI overviews, there's obviously this broader trend happening of LLMs becoming very popular, and a lot of folks using ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude to do search and discovery behaviors. There are two kind of conflicting narratives about this that we see in the digital marketing community. One is that this is the end of search. Google is just gonna, they've struck a blow. It's Google, and Google's just going to decline, and everyone's going to prefer these new technologies. I've seen headlines and LinkedIn posts and everything else making, pretty strongly worded cases like this. But then you see the other side of it, that LLMs are actually complementary with Google. And by the way, they're not really taking that much traffic, and all the things you would do to optimize for Google, you just would do that will help you in LLMs as well. It's not really that different. So what's the truth? What's the way that we would encourage people who are really spending money to think about this? I think that it is true that media hype around LLMs can overshadow the fact that Google is still very dominant. But it's also true that Google's search share has now dropped below 90% for the first time in the last decade. And when we look at these graphs on this slide, we can kind of see that AI adoption is not comparable to, I don't know, a popular social network or something. It's even bigger than that. It's comparable to the adoption rate of revolutionary technologies like smartphones. And that makes us think that we don't want to stick our heads in the sand on this. And when we're talking about search and discovery, we don't just want to use those words as synonyms for Google, that we want to think more broadly. And I think that a successful strategy going forward is going to have to leverage the fundamentals of good marketing, like we keep emphasizing, and going to have some nuance to it to think about how to play to win in both Google and LLM search. We can see some of the opportunity in LLM search and AI-powered search start to take shape when we look at two clients of ours that have actually done well so far with the traffic that they've gained from the LLMs. We have one client that is a very specialized high-tech technology company. They have between 4 and 8 times the LLM traffic of any other client, depending on the LLM. they have seen a healthy incremental gain in their inbound digital marketing revenue based on that traffic. This is obviously great for them. We're excited about it. We're trying to think about how to keep on doing more of this for other analogous clients. But when we look at this and we try to diagnose it, we see that what really was happening here is that the client site was well optimized for its user base. It was well optimized for them by providing a lot of data that, when you look at the pages on their site, it's not fluff, it's not generic marketing copy, it's not sort of lifeless SEO friendly headers and everything else that just have generic copy underneath them. It's really detailed specs and information and formats that are easy to understand. That meant that when this user base of really tech savvy early adopters goes over to the LLMs, the data and the information is easy for the LLM to pull in. And it's a situation where we were attuned to the kind of content, the kind of data that would really move the needle for their target audience. And it was structured in a way that allowed it to show up in the LLM. Therefore, they have users that are likely to use this new technology. The information that they need is there in a comprehensive way, and they're going to follow that user journey all the way through to completion and convert. We have another client that is a much broader consumer base. They're a growth-focused medical device company. For them, the LLM story isn't really in traffic, and it isn't for client A, it's more opening up some new acquisition paths. For client B, it's that this traffic that they are getting is converting at a higher rate. So compared to organic or paid search, the traffic from LLMs is converting better. They've seen some loss of click-through rate in search because AIOs are showing up AIO views are showing up in more of their Google searches, but it's not drastic. And overall, they see the kind of AI search paradigm as being a net benefit for them. So why is this? For them, it's really that they've built a very strong brand. They've invested in brand reputation. They haven't been too blinkered on very, very platform-specific brand KPIs, digital KPIs, but instead they've been thinking about the bigger long-term investment in their brand, and that's paid off. They're prominent in the LLMs, and because their site is well optimized, the information that's there is accurate and is actionable for high-intent users that are using LLMs. So in light of all of this and all what we expect will be even more disruption ahead, what are we recommending to clients? Well, we think really that AI-based search requires new approaches to both reporting and developing strategy. So for our clients, we are reporting on AIO traffic and conversion rates. Similarly, we're reporting on LLMs, and we're trying to gain a more comprehensive understanding of nuances and different kinds of user behavior, different kinds of user intents based on what kind of interface or what kind of platform folks are coming in from. The best agencies that focus on SEO are doing a lot of this. We've done a lot of internal research comparing all the different factors we can think of what might make content show up in AIOs versus LLMs. And we're excited to be able to give our clients a pretty detailed and nuanced set of ideas about these things. We also have practiced greater strategic differentiation. We've always tried to be an agency that doesn't just rely on playbooks and running things back. But some amount of that is just has been part of the reality of search marketing up to this point, that you find a strategic path that works and you try to repeat it. But I think greater differentiation and greater ability to kind of focus in strategy on the journey stage, the user intent, the user attitude associated with a specific keyword or topic. And similarly, we're bringing more strategic nuance to thinking about what is the overall search and discovery opportunity for a given brand, including YouTube. And do you need to start experimenting in a new channel or a new format? Can you get the business value you're looking for in traditional Google search still? These are all questions that need to be answered with detailed analysis on kind of a brand by brand basis. And also thinking about kind of an audience by audience basis and being willing to look at that side of it too, not just think about search in terms of disembodied keywords. So hopefully we see then that these marketing fundamentals represent themselves again here, that thinking about what's going to make your messaging and content more distinct, what kind of brand building is going to have the highest ROI, what can we learn about our audience and their behavior and their preferences through the data that we're seeing come in, and how can we make it easier for folks to find us where they're looking and to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. All of that's going to be a big part of winning an AI search. So everything I've talked about so far is focused mainly on organic search, but paid search also had a very eventful year in 2024. We talk about this sometimes in terms of almost like a new media mix, that Google has been rolling out new campaign types with performance max and demand generation campaigns that are leveraging AI more than ever, and allowing digital advertisers to optimize towards audiences who are likely to engage and convert. These ads are showing now as of last year across multiple placements throughout the whole Google ecosystem. And what we've found, and what's been exciting about this, is that they are an efficient means to gain traffic and conversions. And we've been able to leverage these for great results, especially in the second half of this last year as we've gotten to know these features better. I think one thing that we're talking about internally is just that automation. It feels as if its time has come now in the Google Ads ecosystem. It's always been something that has been interesting, but sometimes doesn't work well for every client, every situation, and can be a little clunky in the past. But we feel like we're really now on the cusp of something more powerful, where Google's AI-driven tools are making our campaign approaches smarter and more effective. And it also is making a sort of very literal focus on keywords feel more obsolete. We feel like the audience signals tools that Google's rolled out, it allows us to add a kind of mix of our audience intelligence with Google's AI-powered optimization. We can find, match audiences and build out audiences, expand them more efficiently than before, especially if you have your own kind of first-party data, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. We feel also that the search themes is a powerful feature of this. That's a way to kind of go beyond having to do a lot of manual keyword analysis and hypothesizing. That another place where the automation has gotten better. And this is something that we just see expanding throughout the Google ecosystem, and again, making it so that you can and have to diversify to really kind of make the most of these tools. Part of the upshot of all this, which we'll talk about a little bit more too in the coming slides, is that this means that your ability to gather first-party data and own data is more important. It also means that creative and a testing approach are more important. These tools will make a lot of things easier, but using them intelligently and having good data, good hypotheses, etc., to feed into them is still something that takes a lot of expertise. We think about this almost that in terms that sophisticated testing and strong critical thinking are kind of table stakes now, especially with so many generative tools built into the Google Ads suite. That now obviously they have tools in Google Ads as of this last year that allow Google to create headlines and descriptions for you. This is something that some folks were already doing programmatically or with earlier versions of Gen AI or whatever else, but now it's right there in the interface, and you can do it in a way that's very nicely aligned with your campaign assets. And it can use generative AI even to write copy in some cases, which is exciting. And I think it's easy for most people to see that Google kind of continue expanding in this direction. And this means, I think, a paradigm shift for a lot of organizations where instead of search advertising being something that just requires a lot of basic but time-intensive campaign management, keyword management, etc., now it requires a higher level view of how the whole program should operate, of how your testing workflows should operate, and of what your strategy is. And that means critical thinking, a sophisticated, experienced approach, probably fewer, more experienced people doing more high-value, high-level activities is the direction that we see this going. And we can't emphasize enough that testing and having good audience intelligence and audience data to feed into your tests is what is going to make you successful in this increasingly AI-based paradigm for paid search. So what are we doing differently now than we were a year ago? What do we recommend to clients? As I've mentioned, we're doing increased testing of how to actually use these AI-powered products. how can we get to a place where we're improving the reach of our campaigns, the engagement of our campaigns, and the ultimate CVR and business value of campaigns by using AI tools in smart ways, and by kind of keeping track and being observant and being scientific and disciplined in making the most of these tools. We also are using AI-powered audience signals to do modeling and to try to find similar audiences. That can be something that's really powerful, especially for a lot of medical brands where traditional modes of targeting are more restricted. We are finally, I think, using AI-powered tools to assist in copywriting, and it just makes it that much easier if you have a strong strategy and strong understanding of your audience behind it to do all of the different copy adjustments and tests that could be really tedious without these AI-powered tools. So the marketing fundamentals are once again here, using AI to create distinct messaging and content, using the full potential of these platforms to build your brand, knowing your audience and making sure that that strong connection to the audience is baked into everything we're doing with new tools and features, and then making it easier for people to do what they're trying to do through clarifying copy, through showing up more places that they're looking, etc. There's been another layer to everything happening for Google this year, which is some leaks that were very salacious and exciting for folks in search marketing, and then also some court cases that were going on in the background throughout the whole year as well. And we've talked about lots of things that happened on the actual platforms. This is a bit of a zoom out to Google as a business and thinking about what the future strategy for Google might be and how it'll affect the work that we all do as marketers. There were two huge leaks in 2024 that were absolutely the talk of the town, so to speak, in the community of SEO folks for a lot of the year. There was a big leak in May of over 14,000 ranking attributes, basically pieces or properties of the core algorithm, and then more added on in a leak later in the year. We talk about this as basically we know more than we've ever known about the ingredients, even if we still don't know the exact recipe. On our Wheelhouse podcast, our CEO and founder, Aaron Burnett, has a great interview with Mike King, who is one of the SEO experts who kind of broke the news of this leak and did some initial analysis of it. That's a great conversation to check out if you really want to go into the weeds of this. We also learned that Google's ranking system is more nuanced and controlled than previously disclosed. And probably most importantly for a lot of people, we learned that Google has really misrepresented a number of things, especially its use of user behavior. As you can kind of see in this poll on the right side of the slide, the SEO community is at an all-time low point in terms of trusting Google, and that will have many implications down the line. At Wheelhouse, we've actually been able to take all this leak material and create an AI-powered environment to query the leaks. So what we've done already, we've found a lot of precise controls for YMYL queries. We've learned more about what exactly Google does differently for health and medical topics, and it just has helped us feel more confident in what was before a more general or vague principle of just how differently Google approaches these topics. And we've seen a lot of really granular differentiation as we reviewed this leak documentation, that different attributes within the algorithm scoring elements like health insurance, locality score, a lot of kind of health things that are versioned, 1, 2, 3. This shows not just a lot of really tight control by Google, but a lot of iteration and experimentation to keep developing it. So our SEO strategists, for us, this really means that we're getting more detailed and more nuanced in how we're thinking about what does it actually take to win for this topic, this search engine results page. We're having to do really close reading and situation-specific analysis because we can't really rely as much as we used to on general principles or past case studies due to what the leaks have revealed to us. In parallel to this, Google has also had two major antitrust cases, one against their search business and one against their advertising business. The first antitrust case, which was actually decided against Google, although the remedies and actual approach to what Google has to do now hasn't been hammered out yet. In the testimony for that, it was revealed that Google uses data from all Chrome users to inform search rankings. It revealed the extent to which they're heavily invested in trying to remain the default search engine for multiple browsers and devices. And it also revealed that all of the logs of organic search behavior are used to inform other Google products, including advertising products, which really challenges the idea that there's this hard, unyielding separation between the two parts of the business. You can imagine the alarm bells that sets off for all kinds of search marketers, paid and organic. The second antitrust case revealed more about what most believe to be some really kind of unfair and cynical practices on Google's part. That Google has deliberately tried to create an environment where they have as much control as possible over the prices that publishers could set for their own inventories. And there's also just a lot of internal practices at Google that have come to light that show that they're really focused on maintaining market dominance in advertising, whatever their rhetoric to big publishers, to advertising practitioners, etc., might suggest. The leaks in the court cases, there's a lot of interesting detail about these that we could do a whole other webinar talking about them at length. But the real kind of takeaway from them for most search marketers is that you have to have new approaches and you have to have new attitudes. So for us, this has meant that where we are now compared to a year ago, we're being more disciplined and more curious, more data focused to make sure that our strategies for Google are really justifiable based on click-through rate data, Google Analytics engagement metrics, search engine results page composition. We are not placing very much weight on Google's formal definitions and Google's formal guidance. We are of the belief that we need to really carefully read the signals about what's actually happening and what audiences actually want. We also know that Google relies very heavily on user behavior in a lot of broad and deep ways. This means that we're thinking a lot about how to engage users and how to produce favorable patterns of user behavior when we design pages. And we're thinking more and more about the differentiation between different types of queries, different types of keywords, different types of user intents to make sure that our content strategies are very fine-tuned. We're also trying to make sure that our search marketing strategies have a very disciplined approach to thinking about the feasible ROI, and that we are not just kind of assuming that here's a keyword, here's the volume that the tool says the keyword has, let's go get that volume. We weren't doing things that bluntly or crassly before, but we're getting, further and further and further away from that paradigm that I think a lot of people think of when they think of search marketing. And we're doing all of this really, I think, in ways that reflect those marketing fundamentals of trying to make sure our messaging and content are very distinct, building a strong brand, knowing our audience, making it easier for people. Everything that we're talking about here gets into Googleese and jargon, but those are really the core things that we think are reflected in the approaches that we're finding work best now. So what are we watching for in 2025? I think one of the big questions in everyone's minds is just how much will Google change? Was 2024 just kind of a throat clearing? Will things stabilize? And then also, how will the LLMs compete? What will happen to the AI-based search? Google's promised a pretty dramatic shift, that's their words, in 2025, that everything's going to be AI. And we're just all wondering at this point, how dramatic will it be? What strategies or tactics will continue to gain or lose value? We're also wondering if Google will debut as part of changes to the search interface, whether it be new ad types, whether it be new formats. It seems safe to assume probably yes, at least somewhat. We also see Google's competitors. We see Perplexity starting to experiment with ads, and we see OpenAI sort of leaving the door open to offering ads on their free or freemium versions. We also see that TikTok, that the fate of TikTok is still kind of deferred. That opens up a lot of questions about the overall digital marketing landscape and mix. We saw towards the end of last year some major changes to Meta's targeting capacities. We assume that it'll still be a dynamic year for Meta, and obviously that plays into considerations about the relative value of Google Ads and what the kind of foundational best practice Google healthcare marketing mix looks like. I would expect that we will see even more changes to search interfaces and to all the user behaviors that surround them and to all the available ad products within them in 2025. One theme that we think will grow in 2025, that this is something we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, but it's a really important undercurrent that affects all marketing, not just search marketing, which is data loss. How will large brands respond? What will become from the emerging best practices around this? Google announced that they're backburnering what they had called their privacy sandbox approach to their analytics and tracking. So they were going to depreciate third-party tracking. They introduced this thing called the privacy sandbox. It was rejected by EU and UK regulatory bodies. So now Google is saying, okay, we're going on a consent model. We know from working with clients in the healthcare space that when cookie consent is implemented, levels of opt-in can be as low as 25%. And even in some cases, 40% of third-party tracking data is already gone for other reasons. So when you start to add together the full picture of data loss that shows up there from a combination of people not giving consent on the one hand and browser level blocking, Apple's restrictions of cookies on the other hand, it starts to be clear that what worked in the past for gathering information is not going to work anymore. So we think that healthcare medical device brands basically need to go towards a really robust first-party data strategy. They need to build the technical infrastructure necessary to own their data. And there's a compliance case made for this, obviously, but when we see what's happening with data loss, it's more than just a compliance case. It's a future-proofing. And in some cases, it's a matter of fending off an existential risk to your ability to do smart, targeted advertising and to use all of the tactics that these different disciplines have developed. We also are very curious about regulatory action. What will happen going forward with these court cases against Google, and how will judgments against them be enforced? We've seen some people speculate that, okay, this is going to be a regulation-free environment under a new administration. I'm not sure that it's that simple, because we've seen people within the Trump administration already being vocally critical of Google and of big tech in general. And perhaps if they want to make an example of one company, Google might be high on the list. We will see. Only time will tell. Really, the most pertinent concrete questions here are, will Google be forced to end its contract with Apple or similar contracts for organic search? What would happen if you lost, 30, 40, 50% of your Safari traffic? Will it be forced to break up its ads business? What would happen? What technical features would be turned off? Of all these different AI-powered things we talked about earlier in the presentation, would any of them depreciate? Will Google have to make other changes to its search advertising business? And what would that mean for the availability of data and targeting, for the availability of these AI-powered features, for different ad formats and surfaces, on and on and on. So we are just going to need to look very closely at what judgments and remedies come down and how Google responds to them to make informed decisions about where we think organic and paid search are heading. So what are we telling clients now? How are we dealing with this environment where there's going to be continued change and there's a lot of uncertainty? Number one, we think that you should be paying really close attention to your data on the impact of AI. On the search acquisition, sure, but also on the user behavior of that traffic. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of big headlines about this is changing, no, it's not, etc. One great example of this is around AI agents, potentially huge disruption to search and to really all online behavior. But how much is actually happening and what is happening for your brand, your site, your campaigns? Don't rely on broad assumptions. Look at data and subject that data to strategic scrutiny, because there might be cases where we have novel types of data or novel ways of interpreting data. Critical thinking about that and collaboration around that is going to be important. We think that brands should continue, second here, to make targeted and thoughtful investments in content strategies that allow you to leverage your unique insights as a brand, perhaps allow you to put out some non-consensus perspectives, perhaps allow you to leverage your proprietary data, and overall that have clear information gain, that someone gets more from coming to you for answers than they would get coming to your competitor. Third here, we think that digital marketing and advertising strategy needs to be aligned with data strategy. As we talked about just a few slides ago, there's a looming risk here that for many brands has already arrived. And that really the brands that we see being ready to compete to win going forward in a more dynamic and uncertain search marketing environment are the brands that have established ownership control over their data and have already stood up a first-party data system. We're really excited in 2025 to keep helping brands make this change and to start building out new experiments, new tactics, et cetera, with the clients we work with that already have made it. Finally, we think that there needs to be kind of a parallel process going on around testing and around AI tools. Especially in ad campaigns, you need to be testing your creative at the same time as you're developing new workflows for producing and reviewing creative. So there's kind of a focus on what you're doing and on how you're doing it. And a mindset of testing and experimentation needs to govern both of those. There's a huge potential here to have high gains in ROI without having to have a lot more human hours. And folks that are smart about grasping that without sacrificing quality or without becoming misaligned with their audience can win. And just to say it one more time, we think that all of this is reflective of these marketing fundamentals that will be key to winning in a really uncertain and dynamic environment. Create distinct messaging and content, build your brand, know your audience, make it easier for people to do what they're trying to do. All right, we're going to finish up with some Q&A, and I have a few questions that I wanted to put in here that are questions I've heard clients say that I think might be on some of your minds that I want to start with, and then we'll see, Grace, if we have some other questions. So the first question, and this comes out of a conversation I had recently with a client. This is kind of a paraphrase of what they were saying. I've seen marketing thought leaders claiming that SEO is dead and others claiming it's more important than ever. Okay, so how should I be thinking about SEO when I see those two things? What's going on with SEO? I think for us, we don't think it's dead, fortunately, but we think that a more nuanced approach to SEO is important. And in general, we would expect SEO to be a channel that you leverage in more targeted ways, and that also the theory of the case about what content you're using in SEO, how it aligns with your audience, all that should be spread across other channels too, and should be consistent with how you're thinking about other channels. And if you have not already started thinking about ways to repurpose content or ways to distribute content through other channels in addition to putting it on site, those are things that can help you get more ROI of SEO. We're not thinking about it as just trying to take your little piece of really, really big pies anymore. Like I said earlier in the presentation, SEO has to be more strategic, more data-based, and hopefully have efficiencies with benefiting other channels as well, or being coordinated with efforts in other channels going forward. The next question that I've heard a lot of variations of this, and I kind of have a generic version here. I want to do a better job of leveraging content to gain more brand visibility so we can be more competitive in the shift to AI-based search. Where should I start? I think the place to start for me is by thinking about your content in terms of your audience, thinking about the needs that your audience has, the objections that they might have. If you don't feel like you have a handle on these things, doing user research to update your priors, so to speak, and then looking at all of your available content through that lens. It should be easier than ever to take core pieces of content you have and use AI tools to turn them into new formats, or to explore new possibilities, to test creative built out of the content. But if you don't have content that has genuine information gain and benefit that aligns with the core needs, questions, objections, pain points, whatever your users have, you're just going to be kind of taking generic and stale approaches to content creative. So I think going back to the basic ideas about how your content feeds your audience, and then thinking about how to use AI tools to scale it up as much as you can and to test what creative might be working or what content formats might be working. I think that's going to be the best path forward. If you feel like, gosh, we have a lot of content, it's gathering dust, or we haven't really leveraged it well, I would start by looking at your audience. Okay, so are there any other questions coming through? Grace, you can jump in if there's other questions. Yeah.
So if you don't mind, if anybody has questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A chat box in your menu down there. I'll give you a few minutes to do so. All right, it looks like we have a question. Okay, Joe, this is a double whammy. Is it still valuable to use traffic or click KPIs for search reporting? And how can I use search reporting to make better decisions?
Yeah, I think click KPIs are still good if they're properly contextualized. And I think the proper way I think to actually use click data to make good decisions is to have a really granular sense of what the clicks actually represent in terms of what type of user they're coming from and in terms of what the intent for that user is. This is not necessarily anything new, but I think it's become more important than ever. I think that the people that are best at SEO were already finding ways to really carefully segment keywords by different user and intent types, and also to look at the user behavior behind different kinds of search clicks to try to hypothesize out a gain in traffic of this kind of keyword seems to translate to XYZ gain in CVR or not, to try to kind of hypothesize about what actually happens when organic search traffic lands on the site. So I do think using some of those basic Google Search Console metrics is still a really powerful tool in the right hands if that data is being carefully contextualized, and if the engagement value and conversion value can be hypothesized about and kind of connected in a cohesive way. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, we have one more question. What do you think the relationship between traditional search and LLM search will look like a year from now?
Yeah, I think a lot depends on what happens with AI agents and how quickly those are functioning like human users in search. Setting that aside, I think one thing that I definitely expect is that user journeys will get more complex. And I think there already are, the data I've seen suggests there already are a lot of people going back and forth between LLM search and traditional search. We might even see folks running searches in parallel on different platforms. I think the idea of comparing what different search engines have to say has kind of gained new traction with more tech-savvy users. On a more basic level, I would expect the LLMs to keep taking market share. I would expect that there will still be a lot of people that find that Google's interface is better or just more familiar, and that perhaps the more that Google's AI overviews look like an LLM and function like an LLM, people won't even be thinking about it as being kind of LLMs over here and Google over there, but rather just a bunch of different interactive interfaces that they can kind of use to stitch together, trying to reach an end goal. That said, I'm working a lot with healthcare providers, which is a little bit different user journey. And if I was doing e-commerce, I would be, I think, a lot more concerned that a lot of investment in traditional SEO tactics was going to stop producing good ROI. But some of that only time will tell. So I guess I would expect more LLM use, but I would expect a lot of it to take place in complex multi-touch journeys that also include Google. And I would expect Google to start looking more and more like one of the LLMs, more or less in proportion to how much they're losing market share to them. But we'll see. Only time will tell on some of this. But yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, thank you, Joe. I believe that is all that we had for questions.
Cool.
All right.
Great. Well, if anyone has specific aspects of this that they want to talk about more, please do reach out to us. We appreciate everyone taking the time to watch this webinar, and every single bullet point on any slide that I've referenced here is something that we have, SMEs that could talk about at much greater length. And some of these things were just one slide that could have been a whole other presentation. So please let us know what questions you're trying to answer in 2025. And you can reach out to me directly or to Wheelhouse as a whole. If you want to chat, or if you have a business problem that relates to any of the material in this webinar and you want us to kind of give us your 2 cents and start talking to you a little bit, please reach out.
Yes. All right. And that webinar recording will hit your email inbox before the end of the week. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.